Hello wine lovers, Trophy Wine Hunter, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm doing a review of what I learned at the Crème de la Crema seminar at the Vancouver International Wine Festival. I find these seminars very useful. Here's a couple of videos of just the lineup and also me tasting at the seminar. I find these quite useful. Having said that, they are fast and furious, so you have to take a lot of notes. Unfortunately, I left my notes at home and now I'm on a trip, so I'm just going to try and do this from memory. First wine was the Mio Latte 43 2020 vintage, a blend of Merlot and Cabernet Sauvignon from Brazil. And the presenter told us that this was a wine that put Brazil on the map. It's really a iconic wine from Brazil, and that's great. So I think that I really applaud that. And this was the things with this type of seminar. It's things that you get to learn that I never knew. I never tasted a Brazilian wine. It was good quality. I liked it. A little bit tannic. Again, these are really young wines, and it's a very quick tasting. I did enjoy it. It wasn't, knock my socks off, but it was pretty decent. So in my mind, it's got the dark fruit flavors. It's got a lot of tannins. So it's a decent wine. So my rating of the wine was 87 points. Then I figured out when I looked up that they were actually putting information up on the screens. And so for the next couple of wines, you'll see that I actually have the screenshot so you can read it for yourself. The next presenter was from Vena Carmen, and then they presented the 2020 Delans Alto Trujillo Estate Blend. Mostly Cabernet Sauvignon, about 75%. And again, all the wines these were really high-end wines, and a great seminar because it's a great collection of South American wines and really top-end stuff. So I was really fortunate to drink this. Again, for me, this kind of went back to my idea of Chilean wines and, why I don't really drink a lot of them. They're good wines, but they're not kind of different and distinctive for me, and they don't really wow me. And so this was the same up this alley with this wine. Good wine, tannic. It was really young from my perspective. Had everything that a cab should have, basically dark fruit, dark plums, cassis, oak, but I didn't get a lot of distinctiveness. I know they have other grape varietals in it. This is the color of the wine. I've got a shot of the wine each time. I think the wine inspector rating is 90 points. I wrote it a little bit lower than that. I rated it 89 points, but mostly because I think it's just very young to drink. Next wine I had a little bit more familiarity with. This is Trepy Chase 2019 Terroir Series Ambrosia Malbec. So they did a very neat thing here with their Terroir series. They chose 3 different distinct vineyards and tried to kind of differentiate them. A BC winery called Blue Mountain has done a similar thing. I think it's a great idea because it can show the distinctiveness of different vineyards with the same grape varietal. So it was neat to me. It's from the Guatelari region, which I am familiar with some of the other videos I've done on this channel. It's high altitude, and I love high altitude Malbec. I think that's a new thing. But with this one, I didn't get the same feeling that I get with a lot of the high altitude Malbecs. I didn't get the floral component and this kind of the more higher acidity, and maybe it wasn't aged or it wasn't aired long enough, but I didn't get that. I got more. It is supposed to be pretty high altitude, almost I think 1,300 meters or 4,000 feet, but I just didn't get the same feel. I think it was good wine, but again, it surprised me that this was high altitude because it didn't have that lightness of style. It tasted a lot more like a regular good Malbec that I would have from a lower altitude. So then it's got the classic Malbec aromas and tastes, but for me it was 90 points. I think Wine Inspector rates it 91 points, and honestly I couldn't tell a lot of difference between this and the Domaine Bosquet reserve wine, which is about half the price. So maybe it was just it wasn't aged or aired long enough, or just my palate wasn't ready for the wine that day, but that's how I felt about it on that day. I was excited about the next wine, which is from Santa Rita. It's their 2020 Piuin de Apalta from the Maple Valley. And again, I've got a newfound love or respect for Carmenere grape, and I'll tell you about that when we get to the Montes wine. So maybe I'm a little biased. But again, Carmenere to me is really what makes Chilean wine special and distinctive. And all these years I've been drinking Chilean wine and getting the wrong idea. I've been drinking Cab or Cab blends or Syrah blends or Merlot blends. And Carmenere is really the grape that to me is distinctive. And now that I've found that and talked to some knowledgeable people, I'm really excited about drinking Chilean Carmenere. And this is a great example. This is a pretty high-end quality wine from Santa Rita. Carmenere is very like Merlot. It's very smooth and encompassing, but the problem with it doesn't have a lot of structure. So if you let Carmenere just grow wild, it's going to be all over the place. And so this wine was really nice, really smooth, nice texture. Everything is good about the wine. Had a really high rating, 93-point Wine Spectator rating. To me, it was a good wine. It was 91 points. I liked it, and I liked the style. It's got that little bit of greenness or vegetative quality. But as the speakers were explaining, that's not a bad word. Greenness is good if it's controlled. And I thought a little bit of greenness, people like a kale type smell or aroma or taste, is actually not that bad as long as it's not overbearing and bitter. And that's what I picked up, a little bit of almost kale, a lettuce type of aftertaste, which is kind of neat in a wine. So I like this wine, and I'll talk about it, Carmenere, a little bit more once we get to the Montes wine. So the next wine is the Montes 2019 Wings Carmenere. And again, this is the most important thing that I learned in the International Wine Festival about Carmenere. And the story behind this is that I saw a broker or / agent at the wine festival, and we're just kind of hanging out, and then she said, hey, why don't we go and taste one of the booths that I represent? It's from Chile. I said, Chile? I guess I'd go, knowing that I'm not a big Chilean wine fan. And I was there, and then got introduced to Carlos Serrano from the winery, and then also Aurelio Montes Jr., the winemaker. And we started to taste, and we tasted this Wings, and I didn't know anything about it, expecting my regular kind of spiel about Cab and how I don't like Chilean wines. I love this wine. It's like, what is this? And so this is the first vintage of this wine. It's going to be well priced. It's 85% Carmenere and 15% Cabernet Franc. And the taste is so distinctive. I was like, wow. And again, that 15% of Cabernet Franc gives it a little structure. The Carmenere is very soft. It's got all this dark fruit. It's got this cocoa. It's got a little bit of greenness. And then the Cabernet Franc gives it the structure. It kind of pulls it in. And this is Carlos talking about the wine at the show. And I just fell in love with this wine. It's like, holy smokes, what is this? And then they asked me to taste their Purple Angel. And I had heard about Purple Angel, never liked it, thought it was overpriced, thinking it must be like a Napa Cab or the answer to American wines. And I couldn't be farther from the truth, because Purple Angel, again, is a Carmenere wine. And so, again, it surprised me. And then when I tasted the Purple Angel, it was unbelievable. And I just, all these years I had never tasted Purple Angel because I always thought it was, Cabernet Sauvignon, but it's not. It's actually a Carmenere blend. So back to this Wings, very good deal. I don't think it's in liquor stores yet, but if it is, go get it at $74 or $70, whatever the price point is going to be. I think it's a really great deal. and I really think it is the competition for super Tuscan wines like Tinello. It's that good. So I was very, very impressed with the wine, and really got my attention. Next wine was from a Bodega Norton, and it's their Gernot Lange 2018 from Mendoza, and in particular it's from the region of Lujan de Cuyo. It is named after their owner, Gernot Lange's Swarovski, and it's a blend of Malbec, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Cabernet Franc. So it's an opportunity for me to drink the wines from the Lujan de Cuyo region, and it is high altitude again, which I like. There's a lot of dark fruit. I found it a little bit more depth than the Trapiche wine, but again, for me, it wasn't distinctively Malbec. It is a blend. It's a great wine, but to me, it wasn't as distinctive as some of the other Malbecs that I've had, and this, in particular, like kind of single vineyard or 100% Malbecs. So for me, it was a good wine, but a little bit ho-hum, quite frankly. So I gave it 89 points. Next wine was probably I was getting a little tired, and it was not as notable as the other wines, so I didn't have the notes for this wine. So this is the Bodega Salazar 2015 Gran VU blend, and it's from the Vale in Argentina. It is a blend, I believe, of mostly Malbec with a little bit of Cabernet Sauvignon. And again, all these are very, very high-end wines. So it was a great tasting, and it was nice that I could go back and compare and contrast different wines. But for me, this wine had a lot of, maybe it had a little bit of licorice, which I'm not crazy about. It had a lot of tannins, a lot of structure. So maybe it just didn't have enough aeration time, but it didn't really grow on me. And so for this tasting, it was probably my least favorite. So I gave it 87 points. Next wine was from Errázuriz, and this is a wine that I'm more familiar with in terms of the traditional style of Chilean wines. This is their 2017 Don Maximo Founders Reserve Cabernet Sauvignon. It is a blend, and it does contain some Malbec, Petit Verdot, and some Carmenère and Cabernet Franc. But the Carmenère in this situation is kind of a understudy. It's not the star. And so the star here really is Cabernet Sauvignon, and this is kind of the classic style of Chilean wines, which I had known, which is basically Cabernet Sauvignon. And from my perspective, again, if you're just trying to kind of compete with Napa Cabernet Sauvignon, I'd rather drink Napa Cabernet Sauvignon for my palate. I'm not saying it's better, but it's just for my palate. It's a little bit more interesting and has a little bit more intensity. And so that's kind of the change, that now that I've discovered the wines where Carmenère is the star or the major part of the blend, it is a totally different wine, and I can see why I would bring Chilean wines. And so this wine is, typical of what I've seen with Chilean wines. Good, very oaky, very heavy, and so it's a good wine, and to me it's 90 points. The next wine was the Bodega Garzon 2018 Balasto from Uruguay. And the presenter of this wine, Mile Sosa, I remembered her because she was far and above the most enthusiastic of the presenters. So I remembered her right away. Even throughout the whole tasting, she was kind of chiming in and stuff like that in a polite manner. But you could see the enthusiasm she had for her wine, and that was really refreshing. Given that I had seen some kind of very ho-hum agents who were not interested in being there, or not interested in talking to consumers, you'd be clear that this winery wanted to get their wine out there and get their message out there. So it was really refreshing to see that, and that gave me a little bit more interest in the wine. Their Balasto is their high-end wine, which uses the Tanat grape. and that's pretty indigenous to Uruguay. It's grown other places in the world, but that's where it really is grown the most. And tannin is really hard to control. It's super, super tannic. And again, she was great about telling us about Uruguay. Really great ambassador for the winery and for Uruguayan wine. So I tasted this wine. I loved it. It was really different. But the thing is, it is tannic, but it was well maintained and well controlled. And it did have those dark flavors, some kind of licorice, some kind of charcoal notes. So it was really an interesting grape type from my perspective, and something different again. And we're always looking for something different. And I don't want people to be competing with, Pinot Noir or Bordeaux or Napa. They all have their own kind of niche markets, and you don't want to be kind of a second rate of anything. So it's just distinct, and I thought this was a very distinctive wine. So I gave it 91 points.
My country, Uruguay, has been producing wines for 2 centuries, and like Canada, we are the best kept secret of the world. Nobody knew about that. Mainly because Uruguay has a very high consumption per capita, and next by Brazil.
And that was Mele talking. And for all these, even though I had a media accreditation, I don't talk to any of the people on stage. They don't know who I am. And so it's not like I'm, friends with all these people. So I just base it on, as a consumer, what I hear for the first time. And I try and come there with an open mind. But, there's some people that are much more engaging, and their stories are much more engaging. And the wines are, I just taste the wines, and I don't really look at the ratings until afterwards. And I just kind of taste or rate based on what I taste. Somehow I think the last 2 presenters got like 2 slides per person. I'm not sure whether I just wasn't looking up or I missed something, but it seemed to me that they got 2 slides in. I don't know why. Maybe it's because they're the last presenters, and so they get to get people's attention a little bit more. But anyways, here's the second slide telling you a little bit more about their the Balasto wine. And then the last wine that was presented was from Katina Zapata, 2019, the Nicolas Katina blend. Again, I'm very familiar with this winery, and in particular their Argentino wine, which is, I think, exceptional example of Malbec. This is also a great example as a blend from various of their vineyards, and the quality is there. I really enjoyed the most of any of the Malbecs presented, and I like to compare and contrast. I thought it was a little bit more rounded. I don't think it's as high altitude as the other ones that were presented, but I thought it was much more rounded and much more balanced and much more full wine, and had all the elements there. Didn't have any holes in it as much. So again, it was a great wine. I think their Argentino is even better. But again, this was a very, very nice example. And I don't have a rating of this, but I would rate it 91 points to probably a little bit higher, maybe 91, 92, somewhere around there. And again, it was really young. It could use a little bit more aeration, I think. All in all, it was a wonderful, wonderful tasting. I learned so much. And it was really fun to actually compare and contrast different ones. Again, I think my notes are kind of brief because I did write them down, but I don't have them with me. So everything that I'm doing now is really off the top of my head from memory. So I hope you've enjoyed this review, and until next time, happy drinking.